Hello everyone, Johnny Allen Supercarcade here, and this is a very different video than what I normally do. Now, this is not meant to mock or copy Mr. Doug Demuro. Simply, I just love his videos and I've always wanted to do one just like his, and I thought what better car to do it than on the quirkiest car I know, the 350Z. So, this will be a Doug Demuro styled review, but hopefully one day Doug will do a review of his own on his own channel with a better car and all that. Because this will not be as concise and amazing as a professional auto journalist will. So, anyways, let's get into it. This is my 2005 Nissan 350Z enthusiast base model. And when I say base model, I mean that's because it has no features whatsoever. And I got this car March 8th, 2016 for just $10,000 with 36,000 miles. So there are 3 trim levels and 3 engine iterations for the 350Z. First you have the Enthusiast with the VQ35DE all the way from 2003 to 2005. And along with that were the Touring and Grand Touring, just with better features but the same engine. And also a limited slip differential in the back. 2006 introduced the DE rev-up motor that had a bit more power and it revved up a little bit higher. From 2007 and on was the VQ35HR. That revved much higher and also had more power. And it also spawned the HR Master Race that we've all come to know and love as DE owners. But the Enthusiast model was the one that was made for car enthusiasts because it was the most affordable one, didn't have any fanciness to it, but it cost the least and made just as much power as all those other types. Oh, and I also forgot about the Nismos, but we're not going to talk about the Nismos. So today I'm going to take you around all the weird quirks and features about this car and then give it a review on the road and then give it a Doug score. Not a John score, it is a Doug score because Doug is the genius who invented this shit. And again, hopefully one day Doug does his own review of this car. So let's start with the outside appearance of the car. Notice the car is very curvy but does not have a single sharp edge. The only sharp edge is probably the hood, and it's about as sharp as a butter knife. It has a very bubbly round shape, unlike an Audi TT, but not unlike a Toyota Supra. This car sadly is not completely stock for this video, but that is where Doug can step in. On the outside there's nothing special, but at the same time there is so much. There is nothing unnecessary about the appearance of the car. No meaningless vents. It came with a little spoiler. There's no hard edges for aero that don't actually do anything. And yet, the body shape and styling are completely unique, and it turns heads everywhere, especially in bright, bright yellow. One interesting quirk about this car that's not even about this car, more so the person who made it, is the person who made it. Most Japanese cars from the 70s to now were designed by Japanese men. But this was actually designed by an American woman by the name of Diane Allen. Same last name as me. You guys may have actually seen the meme somewhere online of all the Japanese guys and then just Diane Allen with the 350Z in the middle, and I'm just like, my girl Diane. One interesting quirk about this car is the headlights. Whereas most headlights are sort of closed off on top and all the light just sort of comes out the front, these are actually completely open on the top. What this does is the light reflects on the bottom down there and it shoots up, and all the light goes straight up. So I guess Diane wanted us all to be able to see a bunch of branches falling from trees as we're driving down back roads in the woods. Either that or Diane really hates people and loves to blind them on the street, because that's what this does now, especially with the HID kit that I installed in a previous video. Another interesting quirk about this car is the radio antenna. Now, I installed a shorty antenna which gives me a total of about 3 radio stations that include Bible study, Latin soul, and music from the 80s to now. The original antenna is so protruding and ridiculous that it's almost universally hated by 350Z owners. Many of them, in fact, either get shorty antennas like this, or they completely delete the whole antenna thing altogether. This was probably that one thing where when they made the car, they sort of were like, oh, it needs radio, doesn't it? Oh God, where are we gonna put that? Right here. So I think we could almost all agree that this antenna was definitely an afterthought, and it just completely ruins the whole body line of this side of the car. Thanks, Diane. One thing many owners don't know is that on the gas cap, there is actually a hook to put your gas cap. Now mine came off, but it doesn't even matter because I can just put it right there. And it works. Thanks, Diane. Another quirk many people don't know is that if you hold your unlock button, it'll actually roll down your windows if you wait about 5 seconds or so you can cool off on a hot day. There's also a way to toggle if you want your car to honk when you lock it like this, so you can sneak into your girlfriend's house and not wake your parents. That's honestly about it for the exterior. Now let's move inside the car to the interior for the extreme quirkiness. So before we even get into the interior of this car, let's just count up the sheer number of Z badges there are on this thing. 1 Z badge on the back that I moved to my window, 2 on the fenders, 2 on each door sill, 1 inside both door vents, 1 on the steering wheel, 1 on each floor mat, 1 on the rear trunk mat, and 1 on the rear cross member. That's 11 Z badges in this car. Not even Nissan badges, Z badges. I guess Diane really wanted to make sure you knew you were driving a Nissan Z. Upon my first impression of the driver's cockpit, I realized this car is just as simple as it is on the outside. Yes, I added lights and stuff, and I drilled holes for more lights and never installed them, but the holes are still there. But either way, the interior only has what is necessary except for the gauges on the center console pointed towards the driver. You have dials for the AC over here. I installed new stereo because my factory one was broken, and then that one broke, and I got the cheapest one I could find because I was dead broke at the time. But this car really just gives you what you need. One surprising quirk is this car actually has 3 cup holders, even though it only seats 2 people. So we have one right here that gets blocked by my LED lights, and I kind of broke it a little bit. But there we go, now it goes back. Then you have 2 right here that actually have some stuff in them because I didn't clean this out because I didn't have time. But then you have 2 right here that can be removed from your center console. This is kind of amazing. In such an impractical car, it comes with more cup holders than there are passengers. I guess Diane really wanted to make sure that you could get the Mocha and the Frap too. One of the weirdest quirks of this car is the glove box. If you may notice, it's not here. Many people get in the car and ask me, where is the glove box? And they're very surprised when I tell them it's actually behind you. If I pull this seat forward right here, it's back here. And you may wonder, what do you do if you're pulled over and the cops want your papers and you have a passenger? Well, Diane thought of that. On each sun visor, there's a little slit right here for all your papers, so you can put them in there. What's weird is that they actually have those on both sides, but these weren't constructed the same way. It's not the same visor. There's 2 visors that both have slots. I suppose the only reason why they would have done this is so that this is if you get pulled over here in America, and this is if you get pulled over in Japan. So this is your American sun visor and your JDM sun visor over here. It's actually very helpful because if I am pulled over and I don't have a passenger, I don't need to lift up my seat and reach all the way back here, and the cop can't see where I'm reaching for, and he may think I'm reaching for my Second Amendment, but I'm actually just getting my papers, and then I don't get shot. It's great. Thanks, Diane. Out here saving lives. I appreciate you, Diane. I appreciate you. There are also 2 more storage spaces right back here that just click to open, nice and simple. You have one in your center dash, and then you have the ones in the door pockets. Now these are the ones that are perfect for your phone or for someone or for someone who hates to text and drive, because if you put your seat like mine, you literally cannot reach and grab out of this pocket whatever you put in there when the door is closed. You have to open the door to get your hand in this pocket and take something out. Now, it is possible to get something out of here if it's small, but it's very, very difficult, and it hurts my hand to do so. There's also another secret storage compartment behind my seat. Now, if you have the Bose stereo package, you get a giant sub right here in the back, a gigantic sub right here. But again, this car is base model. It has no features at all. So, what do I have? Nothing. Therefore, you can get a panel popper, something like that. Get back here. You just take it right off, put it down there, and you have a whole nother storage compartment, just like that. Like I said, this car is an absolute base model. So base, in fact, that it doesn't even have traction control. Instead, it's just two little nubs that just sit right here. One button is supposed to be where the traction control button would go, and the other button is to toggle the roof on the convertible version. But then down here is the button for the gas cap. I've heard of many 350Z owners about to charge down a mountain road, and then they go to shut off their traction control and instead open up their gas cap. Thanks, Diane. Many people praise the fact that this car has a tachometer right in the center of the gauge cluster. But I must say, the best part about this whole interior is the gauges in the center. These things are amazing. So, on the far right, we have a voltmeter. In the middle, we have an oil pressure gauge. But on the left is the best feature about this entire car. I'm not sure what they call this gauge, but it has several different functions that you can operate with just the touch of one button. First, you have a speedometer that I use almost all the time in replacement of my normal dial that sits here on my gauge cluster. I hardly ever find myself looking at my normal speedometer because this is just so much easier. If we hit the top button, then you get a thermometer, then a miles driven to empty gauge, then an average MPG and average miles per hour, which you hold the button to reset. Then a trip timer that shows you the miles but also the hours and minutes, which again you hold the button to reset. Then also a stopwatch function to time lapse or something like that. Then tire pressure monitoring for the front and rear. Then also you have your shift light function. Basically with this, what you can do is you can set at what RPM you want your shift light to turn on. What it'll do is 500 RPMs before the one you set, it'll blink. When it hits the one that you set, it'll turn red, and it'll turn bright red, and you can clearly see it in the dashboard. And one thing people don't know, if you want it to go up by 500s instead of 100s, you just hold the button and it'll go up by 500s. Also, if the temperature is 36 degrees outside, what it'll do is when you start up the car, it'll start on the thermometer showing you 36 or lower, and it'll give a little warning on the bottom that says icy. Just so you know that this time when you go out and take your car out to drive, you might die. Diane's out here saving lives once again. I must say, one of my favorite quirks about this car, out of all the many quirks on this car, is this sticker right here. I thought this was a joke. When I first got it, I didn't think it was real, but this is actually a real thing that was put in there from Nissan. It's a little diagram showing you how to put two golf bags in the back of this car. They actually thought they were selling this car to, you know, middle-aged men with money who want a nice little sports car. I guess that's who they first sold it to. And I do know a couple of owners like that, but I don't think I'm the clientele they were looking for, because I hate golf. Thanks, Diane, for helping us with our golf bags. So that is just about all of the weird quirks and features about this car. I'm sure Doug is gonna get a couple more that I missed. I'm sure I missed some. Doug is the expert. Doug, if you're watching this, please do a video on one of these cars. Please do, I mean, a DE or an HR, whichever. Just do one, please. I would love to see it. That's kind of the whole point of why I'm making this video, because I want you to do one of these cars. But I can't ask you to do my car because it's not stock, unfortunately. So now I'm gonna take the car out on the road. I'll only be on the highway, so sadly I can't get any rolling shots of the outside for you guys. But I will give a most likely mediocre and haphazard review of this car. But again, Doug, come on, help me out. So yeah, let's get out on the road. Okay, so I am here in the 350Z. You may have noticed my sweatshirt now says Vans on it. I'm wearing a different sweatshirt. It's not magic, it's not an Easter egg, I'm just wearing a different sweatshirt, okay? But, so, let's talk about this car. Let's start with the shifter on this car. It's very precise. You go right into gear, it stays in there. Honestly, it feels similar to a gated shifter minus like the clicks and sounds and stuff. It makes little clicks and you can feel the clicks. But yeah, the throttle on this car is spectacular. It is electronic. It is just instant. It goes just straight away. It really does. Like if I downshift, it just shoots right up. Like watch. It just shoots. Just shoots. Now, it's not as high revving as other cars, unfortunately, but the response is very, very quick. Do it again. Just like that. Instant. Almost instant. Feels instant. Unlike in like the E92 M3, you have to sort of hold it for a second, and then it flipped up. This car on the highway is spectacular. Yes, it's not the smoothest ride around, but it doesn't have enough power to really like bolt it on. Like it can bolt it, but it's not crazy high horsepower, yet it has enough power to just get you through the lanes just perfectly fine. It has enough power to just zip you on through just fine. And it works really, really well. The steering in this car is surprisingly very precise. It is, and everything I'm saying is for a car of this price, for a car for $5,000, $6,000, this is what you're getting. Fairly precise steering that's pretty pointy. Like I turn it the tiniest bit and the car starts moving. There's no give at all in the steering column. Yeah, comfort, it sucks. I mean, bumps are hard, shakes a little bit, there's rattling noises. I think it might actually be my louvers in the back. But, oh, this wind noise is horrible. There's tons of road noise. But you know what? It just adds to the whole experience. When you go fast, you really feel like you're going fast. This car's sense of speed is like, I give it a 2-time sense of speed. As in when you're going 30, it feels like 60. It's like that. A 2-time sense of speed. Not to mention that this car's V6 sounds fantastic. A lot of people knock the sounds of V6s unless they're like 3.5 and up. Like actually more like 3.7 and up. Like the 370Z or the V6 Mustang or something like that. But this 3.5 sounds delicious. I love the sound of this car. It sounds fantastic. I'll admit, it does sort of sound like a trombone. The VQs have a reputation of sounding like trombones, but but I think it sounds glorious. Visibility is shit. As you can see, well, can't see behind my head. If I was sitting over on that side, I couldn't see back there, nor could I see over there. But it's okay because you have the fairly large rear, the fairly large side window, and you can just sort of guess. You gotta be good. Like, you have to be good at your estimates of where cars are coming from and things like that. get into this car. This is not a good car for a first-time driver. I was not a first-time driver when I got this car. I had already driven my dad's E92 M3, again, which I learned stick on. I had driven my sister's BMW 325i and my brother's Audi A4. So I had driven those cars around for about 6 months before I got this car. Barely ever driving the M3 though. I actually stayed away from the M3 because I was so scared to crash it. But yeah, this is definitely not a good car for a first timer, like first time driver. This is your absolute first car you've ever driven. Well, not ever driven, but the first car you drive daily. Not this one. Drive around your mom's van for a little bit, then you get in this car. But what that means is like this car is a really good entry level sports car for like the higher tier, more higher horsepower cars. This is a very good entry level car. This car to the road is what the Miata is to the track. You know what I mean? The Miata is a great car to start on a track because it only has like 130, 40 horsepower. And you can just get some suspension mods and just whip it around, or a BRZ or something like that, and just whip those cars around, learn a track, learn how to take turns, learn how to brake, learn the dynamics of racing on a track, and then you get into a higher horsepower car. Just like this one. This one, you get in this, and you can drive, I guarantee you can drive almost anything at this point, especially if it's manual. You could go from this to a Corvette C606, honestly, you could. Because this thing lacks so much, it gives you so much back in experience. You learn how to handle a fishtail. You learn how to modulate throttle really well, because this car's clutch is very stiff. That is one other thing. You can't really feel a bite point when you just press down on the clutch. You have to be driving and moving and shifting gears to feel the bite point. So the clutch is hard to learn, but once you've learned it, it's in your memory forever. It's never going away. But this car definitely teaches you how to drive a more high horsepower manual vehicle. A part of me wishes it was all-wheel drive so I could drive it more in the winter, but oh well. Its handling overall is fairly good. It does have a lot of body roll because of its weight, and its weight is a big factor. Like, this thing needs a diet so badly. It weighs over 3,300 pounds, and with only 287 horsepower, that really holds it back. And that's only at the crank. It's only like, what, 230-something, 20-something to the wheels or something like that, I think. There's lots of places to save weight in the interior, lots of places on the exterior for carbon fiber bits. Because of the aftermarket support for this car, there's so many parts you can get. There's so many. I will say, overall, this car drives spectacularly. It's such a fun car to drive. It really is a fun car. I would drive this every day for the rest of my life if I could, honest to God, and I would never get bored. There's never been one day where I drive this car and I'm like, you know what, this thing sucks. Never. It's never happened to me before. You can drive this car for the rest of your life and enjoy it. It's always a fun ride, always an exciting time. Car's like a party, always a fun time. Just don't fuck up or, yeah. Look at put in your place. This car will put you in your place for sure. That was my unprofessional review of the Nissan 350Z. Now it is time to give the car a Doug score. In styling, it is a very boldly shaped car, and it is very eye-catching, minus the mods I have done, while also being simple and functional. I give it a 6. In acceleration, the official 0 to 60 time is 5.2 seconds, so it gets a 5. In handling, I did upgrade handling a little bit, so I will deduct 1 point from how it feels now. The steering is very precise for a car of its stature, and the stock suspension is fairly stiff, but does have a bit of roll. Its major downfall is its weight getting thrown around. Its major downfall is its weight being thrown around. I give it a 6. In cool factor, this car is definitely very cool. Even before I got the mods, I had it turned heads everywhere. Not to mention, it's a drift icon and has been in a bunch of movies. I give it a 7. In importance, like I said, it is a drift icon and an icon in the car scene in general. I have seen 350Zs as track cars, drift cars, time attack, drag racers, off-road, stance, dubbed, and crazy and plain. I would say its importance is pretty up there with the 240SX and the Skyline. I give it an 8 in importance. That makes its weekend score 32 out of 50, which is right where it belongs, above the lower half, but not up there with the more high-end vehicles. Now on to the daily category. In features, this car lacks quite literally everything except a stereo and air conditioning, and its 2 seats doesn't really help it that much, and also doesn't have traction control, but it does have ABS. I'm going to give it a 2 in features. In comfort, this thing has a very tight suspension and is a very rough ride. The cloth seats don't help, but there's a good amount of elbow room. I give it a 3. In quality, well, everything is made of plastic and that's about it. It has a lot of horizontal trunk space for groceries, but not a lot of vertical space for suitcases. As long as it is taken care of, it can run for a very long time with no issues, except the infamous oil burning issue. I give it a 4. In practicality, it only has 6.8 cubic feet of cargo volume, which would be a 3, but mediocre gas mileage and only 2 seats bring it down to a 2. And finally, we have value. This car is not even at rock bottom right now. The completely stick and special edition low mileage versions of this car may retain their value or go back up one day, but this base model enthusiast package certainly is going to continue to tank and tank. That means you are getting even more than what you paid for with this car. I see this car for sale around $6,000 sometimes, and it goes just as fast as the ones that are $16,000. Not to mention the heavy aftermarket support for this car. While it doesn't have many features and is not that comfortable, I'm going to give it a 7 in value because of how amazing of a driver's car this is. So that brings its total daily score to a somewhat sad 18 out of 50, which brings its total Doug score to a 50 out of 100, right in the middle. This actually makes complete sense because the car is utterly impractical in almost every sense, but it's a really good driver's car and you get a lot of bang for your buck. For less than $10,000, you get a very peppy, truly sporty car that can run in almost any genre of racing and is loved by many people around the world. Now, in a few years, you probably won't be able to find an unmodified manual car, and their value is going to go down to something like the 240SX. But no matter what, it will always be the car of little kids and broke adults' dreams.